Welcome back to Fair's fallacious philosophy-finding foray in fiction, where we will wallow wistfully in wishful wonder of the morals displayed in media. This little excursion is about the kind of fucked up morals I've seen in media and the implications thereof. The unintentional implications that you almost can't believe somehow slipped the mind of the writers, that twist the world and story in truly disturbing ways. Don't worry, there's a greater point about writing that I'm making by the time this video is done.
We get there when we get there!
Let's start with a basic analysis of a Merriweather comic to set up an intentionally fucked up moral question, or ethical dilemma. It begins so far so simple with a basic comic of two friends about to take the teleporter to Tokyo, for lunch. Then zap! Her friend is fried and collapses in a pile of ash, followed by her phone ringing. It's her friend in Tokyo, saying she's okay. You see, they make a copy, then burn the template body. It's not a wormhole. Who would own their stuff if there were two of them? Therefore, the original has to go. It ends with her friend correctly having a mental breakdown about how okay her friend was with being killed, while a copy takes over her life. The clear point of the comic is to show how fucked up teleporters are in theory. This is one of the big issues with teleporters in any series or in reality. But first, let's be clear, this is not the ship of Theseus. There are so many people in the comments saying this, and it's a little disturbing that so many people don't understand what the ship of Theseus is. The ship of Theseus is a theoretical ship that has a board replaced after a voyage, then another, and so on, until the last original board is replaced. Is that the same ship anymore? A comparison you could make is the human body. Your cells are replaced every day. Every 7 years, you've replaced every cell in your body at least once. Are you the same person every 7 years? Is it the same body? This concept is like if you took a careful record of every piece of the ship, made a copy of it, then mulched all the pieces of the original. There was no slow transfer. I got into an argument in real life about this concept, when someone insisted an implant constantly updating a backup of memories that is spun up as a new you in the event of your death was immortality. Now, you all know me, I'm very pro-immortality. I support immortality. I think it is where we should be going. And while I could understand that legally, my point was that this still isn't you as in the current stream of consciousness and perspective. He kept insisting that I was arguing for the idea of a soul. No. I don't know where or how I lost him, but to make sure I don't lose you, let me be very clear. Your current perspective as you is an active process. If that ends, you, from your perspective, or lack thereof now that you're dead, are no more. The copy brought to life may have all your memories and personality, but it is a new and distinct perspective, not a continuation of the previous one, even if it's considered a continuation of the mind for legal or interpersonal intents and purposes. You following? I hope so, but feel free to ask questions in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. Basically, if the end of the original isn't required, multiple copies can be made, and the new one is not made as a necessary result of the process, then it doesn't really apply. This is why the lore of my channel and the Fair clones are a moral atrocity. Am I fair? Or some poor memory-grafted echo taking someone's place? Are my thoughts my own? Or are they part of the personality I was given? Am I even real? Or am I just a cobbled together experiment simulating thought? It's so fucked up! Which I'm definitely okay with. Now, in media, that's not always the intent of these things. These are not always the moral questions or ethical dilemmas of the story. The transfer transit system in the show Dark Matter is obviously fucked up. It makes a temporary you, and then the new memories that were made by that new you are sent back to the original while the copy is killed. It's a dystopia. The casually fucked up tech isn't really the moral they're trying to work with, if they were trying to work one at all. Plus, they went into time travel and got cancelled, so we'll never know if they intended to address the casual fucked up reality of their world. What I'm talking about, primarily, a page and a half into the script, is the moral messages that they build into something but seem to have missed the point, not the teleporters that are fucked up as a byproduct. Consider the moral message of Black Panther 2, specifically with the new Black Panther Shuri. Revenge is bad. She decided not to kill Namor because that would make her like Killmonger or Namor himself. That may be somewhat true, but this seems to ignore some rather important things. Like the fact that he's a blackmailing psychopath that expressed a desire for genocide, demanded that your people become enforcers for him, launched a terror attack against civilians, assassinated your ruler, blamed people for violating a border that he intentionally kept secret, and claimed 70% of the Earth's surface as his people's property while having the gall to call the rest of the world selfish. I get it, revenge is a bad justification to kill someone, but I would argue that killing innocent civilians for violating a rule that you intentionally hid from them is actually a really good reason to kill him. Plus, you know, all that other stuff. It's like they had the basic concept of this moral and it was somehow put in while completely unaware of the entire rest of the context. This twists the morals of the main character. Now, instead of the intended result of her choosing not to seek revenge like Killmonger, she's a moron who sacrificed the safety of the world, justice, and the safety of her own people for her own sense of moral superiority. I wonder if she's on Twitter. Fucking up the morals harms it similarly to how fucking up the setting can harm the narrative. Imagine if you had a single warship with all of one non-lethal weapon and a crew of people standing on top of it with spears. Electrify the fucking hull or something. What the fuck is even in the rest of this stupid thing? If it's full of anything except nanotech Iron Man suits, then you are officially the dumbest civilization to ever exist. You have the tech and the resources, you're all fucking stupid. This is not some one-off of a moral getting twisted by not considering the requirements to justify it or the context you're working in. At the end of Steven Universe, they turned the big bad guy into a good person, as they had with the others before. But this is ignoring the context again. Like, why the others could be understood. The others were all coming from a classist society that had a bad history of wiping out entire peoples for going against the grain. Super powerful beings had pounded brainwashing into their heads that this was the right thing to do, or else. Often there was critical information kept from them that prevented them from empathizing. But the big bad was the one who made those issues. They kept the info separate. They ordered the deaths, the genocides. They were the driving force that chose to do all these horrible things. Even if she decided to turn around and regretted her actions, she still had recompense coming to her.
Excuse me, Darth Vader, he was redeemed?
Nope, you've missed a part. Darth Vader was not forgiven or spared punishment. People like Darth Vader had to die. This isn't just with the addition from the prequels either. Take off the rose-tinted glasses and you'll remember that Darth Vader was an irredeemable monster long before he killed raiders and younglings. He was complicit in the creation of a planet-killing weapon, twice! For the purpose of scaring the galaxy into obedience. He was okay with the destruction of Alderaan and helped it happen. This may come as a surprise to you guys, but somewhere in the billions of people probably living on that planet, there was probably at least a dozen or so children. He only had second thoughts when it was his kid dying. Not only did the makers know that Darth Vader had to die, he himself seemed to know that he deserved to die or would be killed for what he did no matter if he did the right thing at the end. That's the part that the Steven Universe writers seem to have missed. If Vader had lived, he would have been killed or imprisoned for life for what he had done. I don't even think he was over the idea of an empire. There's some argument that being a good person isn't a requirement for becoming one with the Force. Maybe it was nepotism since the Force was his daddy or something. The bad guy turning good is a neat idea, but that doesn't mean you can forgive the horrible things they did, especially if they were the driving force behind those things. Even something as non-serious like the Barbie movie fucked up its message and its morals. They had some fairly powerful criticism shielding with how cartoonishly exaggerated things were. After all, some guy slapping a girl's ass in broad daylight in public view with her rather built boyfriend right there would seem like a great way for him to finance his dentist's next holiday. But this is a zany, over-the-top idea of an unfair world. Yet the ending undermined the whole damn thing. At the end, instead of recognizing that they need to build a fair society, she decides that they won't make it equal. Not until it's equal on the other side. Wait, what? What sense does that make? They know inequality is bad. They know that equality is the right thing to do, yet they chose not to. The other world has no reason to care about how you live. So you're just going to oppress people slightly less because some people who don't have any reason to care about what you do are also doing it, so you won't do the right thing to what, spite them? To force a cosmic balance? No matter your reason, it makes you a shitty person because you know what is right and had the opportunity to do it. Though even their world itself seems to be at odds with the idea behind it. Despite being a reflection of the real world, that doesn't seem to be true. If it were, then the Barbie should be stealing credit for what the Kens did, right? The cartoonish exaggeration of the world has put it at odds with the concept here. Both the men in the real world and in Barbie Land are incompetent, yet the Kens still took over somehow. Yes, I am aware of the cover line claiming that they simply hadn't experienced it before, but the Kens are incompetent and you don't need to personally experience a bad idea to figure out how to fight against it. You'd use a tactic called reasoning that the writers of this film are probably unfamiliar with. The world is a twisted mess that undermines the message by throwing the mirror concept out the window and requiring the Barbies to be both wildly ineffective at the midway point, but also inspirationally capable. Be inspired, children! These are powerful role models! Who folded immediately at the first sign of unfamiliar oppression. Well, I know I'm inspired. Finally, in this movie, Ken gets shafted for no reason at the end. Not just with the Kens being made only slightly less oppressed, but also with his own desires. One of the first things that made him desire change was that people in the real world treated him with some level of respect, saying, "Excuse me," and such, asking for what time it is. He was treated like a person. In the real world, people would care about what he wants or says, while in Barbie Land, his input or desires aren't really considered. So how does this get addressed in the end? He's told to define himself, rather than to seek acknowledgement from others.
Is your head up your ass for the warmth?
That's a great thought and a great moral. For another story, he wanted to be treated like a person. Telling him to self-actualize doesn't do shit for that. Hey women and LGBT plus people, why do you want people to not discriminate against you or treat you like human beings? Have you considered just defining yourself? I can't help but feel like that would be very little comfort to anyone. But that's what the movie is saying, albeit accidentally. Like two different ideas for his character were mashed together. It makes me wonder if there was a rewrite to his character and they never realigned the ending to the new route for him. These malformed morals aren't just with new writing. Reboots also tend to twist what they were remaking. I've spoken about Mulan in the past, but in the Pinocchio remake, they seem to have missed the point of the original to some extent. In the original, Pinocchio chooses not to go to the school as he was told. He chose to do something wrong right after his promise not to. When he chose to do bad things, his situation got worse. This lesson is muddied right at the start of the remake because Pinocchio does go to the school as he was told. He was even offered the same thing as the original by Mr. Fox, but said no. He kept his word and went right to school. Then he was thrown out of the school and was convinced by Mr. Fox to follow him. So in the new one, his choice was taken from him. He didn't break his promise or make a clearly bad choice in his own interest of fun, but his situation got worse anyway. The old message, be brave, truthful, unselfish, and your life will be better for it. New message, fuck you. Life sucks no matter what, and even if you do as you should, it will take the right choice away from you. Not completely untrue in all circumstances, but not a great moral lesson on average. And certainly not a good idea to take that as a lesson for how you act in your life. This event also kicks off the whole movie. Did they just not understand the importance of those events as they were? Did they watch the movie or analyze it before they were writing the remake? There is a difference. If you're working on official media related to another piece of media, you can't just watch it. You have to really dig into that shit. Just like the issue with Doctor Who that I mentioned once before. The Jodie Whittaker Doctor hated guns as an object, which isn't the Doctor's stance. He would use and arm people with guns when the situation called for it, but when you have a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, and he doesn't like the perception of a threat that they give off, so he doesn't like them or the jump to using them. In The Empty Child, he took Jack's gun because despite the massive threat that the masked people posed, they were innocent victims in this situation. He could also spare the empathy to give most enemies a chance. But with the Daleks, and often the Cybermen too, he would be fine with people using guns to save themselves. But in the Chibnall era, she just seems to hate the item. When the companion wants to use one against the soulless killing robots, she objects and chastises him for it, even though he bought the time that they did need. Then she insists that they not shoot the mutant spiders, cause that would be wrong. Instead, they seal them in a vault to slowly starve to death and cannibalize each other. Is this the Doctor's sadism arc? Because what the fuck? Then she has the audacity to be mad that the villain shot one. Lady, that's far better than what you did to them. Yet again, it's like they had a vague idea about what was said and done, but failed to grasp the actual concept of the story, characters, and their morals. Even shows like Stargate have the awareness of their own script to admit when they're doing something fucked up. Like when they decide to turn the Wraith Michael into a human again.
What I am is not a disease you can cure.
This would wipe his memory, essentially killing him.
And if I remember nothing of what or who I am, if this consciousness is erased, what is the difference between that and death?
All of that because of the unfortunate fact of what his species needs to do to be alive. They fully acknowledged how fucked up what they were doing is, and they made no excuses for it.
The treatments are more effective now, and eventually he may find a permanent solution.
If you really believe that, those Wraith you transformed wouldn't be in stasis on the ship. They'd be here, reveling in your hospitality.
I love a good moral dilemma in a show. I can see how you could accidentally make a messed up ethical issue, but these are neither of those. These are morals intentionally written into the story that were fucked up by the very story they are a part of. These issues can come from a lot of places. With a Marvel production, there's so many reshoots and rewrites that it's almost impressive that they had full coherent sentences, let alone a functional moral.
Yeah, that's definitely a case of me just not knowing what to do with the script.
I'm still not giving them any points for the effort. Attempting to fistfight a tsunami could have you giving a splendid showing of effort, but that doesn't change the fact that your approach to the issue was flawed from the start. Steven Universe had an end cap of episodes and wanted to have the hero save everyone. Then they made the villain really bad and discovered far too late, if they realized at all, that they had written themselves into a corner. So they buried their heads in the sand by flying face first into the ground. You can ignore how your writing has twisted your story's moral all you want, but the people who watched it with their brains on and their fandom glasses off all saw that your ending was a crash landing. And a crash landing tends to sour the memory of the in-flight meal. As for Barbie, well, they just wanted a moral. Everything else seemed to be hastily filled in around it, with dismissive statements that you're supposed to take at their word rather than notice what the actual story is. And occasional lampshading to hopefully keep you from thinking about anything the movie says hard enough to see the seams. This is the expected result of putting the statement over the story. The rest is just add-ons, and never becomes interwoven. There was a good movie to make here if it had been fused properly, but no, it wasn't. Pinocchio's issues were that they just didn't seem to fully grasp the movie. They knew the events that occurred and maybe even were fans of it, but they clearly missed the purpose of some of the scenes. Which makes me want to take away points they'd get for other scenes that they managed to pull correctly, because they're just copying. In fact, it's even more ridiculous that they managed to fuck it up with a goddamn cheat sheet. If you can't even copy the idea right, just do what Beauty and the Beast did and simply copy the whole movie scene for scene. At least then it won't come out measurably worse. Finally, the Doctor's morals never seem to work into the writer's head. The idea of thing bad never went beyond that. Never considering why, and because the why never passed through the writer's thick skull, they didn't know how to incorporate the idea or what would undermine the whole point, because they didn't know or didn't care what the stance was founded on. I'm not sure I could draw a perfect through line for all of these, and I'm not going to. What I'm highlighting is that this is starting to become common in big budget movies. It's something that not enough people seem to criticize them for, and not enough writers seem to care enough about. It's like an entire generation of hundreds of millions of dollars being poured into movies being written by fanfiction writers. No one's perfect, but if you want your moral to land as intended, you need to consider it as a part of a greater story and how it will come out as a part of the rest. not a standalone existence that you can plop down in the center of the screen like the disembodied pile of organs it is and expect accolades as a maker of life. None of what you've made is any good unless the rest of it is there too. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was part of the What is Woke script, but I thought it branched off too much from the topic and made the original too long, so I fleshed it out into its own topic. Let me know what morals you thought were executed properly, or maybe one that was messed up in amazing fashion. Feel free to put them in the comments below, like the video, subscribe, forfeit your immortal soul, follow on Twixer, so on and so forth. But if you disagree, I am always open to discussing it down there as well. Or if you think that the more adventurous attempts at morals were perfect and I must be put to death for daring to ask that they think these things through, then you too can comment below, as long as you be entertainingly angry.